Welcome to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. If you were with us last week, you heard a lot more about Jacob. And we talked about Jacob in a previous show also when we talked about his father Isaac. Well, we're going to continue that today. We're going to continue what happened after the blessing was given to Jacob and Esau came in. So there'll be a little overlap for those of you who saw last week's show, but it helps the new audience. We're in Genesis 27 if you have your Hebrew scriptures. If you're a Gentile, get out your Old Testament. We always tell you it doesn't mean that there's less value to it. It just means it preceded. It was written in Hebrew, where the New Testament is written in Greek. Verse 34 says, when Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud, bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me, me too, my father." Well, now he wants his blessing. Before, for a bowl of soup, he sold it to his brother. But he said, "Your brother came and deceived me and took your blessing." So Isaac knew that what he said and spoke into existence is going to happen. That's why our words are powerful. We got to be careful. When we say, "You're driving me crazy," well, you know, if you really keep saying that, you might go crazy. Then they're just upsetting you. They're not driving you crazy. So Esau said, "Isn't it right to name Jacob?" Well, Jacob means deceiver. This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He's taken my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Well, the two were connected. They were inseparable. Okay? Doesn't see that. And now he took my blessing. Then he said, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you, and has made all his relatives his servants. And I have sustained him with grain and with new wine, so that what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Well, you know, that's like salvation. You know, if God's calling you into a relationship with him and you keep saying later, "It's not important, I'm too busy, I'm this, I'm that," well, someday it might be too late. Esau says to her father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwell will be always from the earth's riches, away from the earth's riches, away from the dew in the heavens above." That sounds like he's going to live in the desert. "You will live by the sword." Well, we know the Arabs love their swords. "And you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." Well, that's what they're doing now. Okay? Esau held a grudge against Jacob. Still exists today. Because of the blessing his father had given him. There's always jealousy at the root of things. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." He's saying, well, when my father dies, I'll kill him. You know, he respected his father enough not to cause his father that anguish. When Rebekah was told what her oldest son Esau had said, she sent for her youngest son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother's Laban's in Haran." Well, if you start listening to the wrong people and doing the wrong things, you have to continue, I guess. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, Oh, what you did to him, not what I did to him, right? I will send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both you at one day? Well, now she sees what has happened as a result of her actions. What's going to happen? So Rebekah says to Isaac, she goes in again and says, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among them, women of this land, from the Hittites, women like these, my life will not be worth living. Well, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it sounds to be a pretty good story. So what happens? Isaac calls for Jacob and blesses him again. Then he commands him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once, okay? He's sending him away to Padan-aram, to the house of your mother's father, okay? Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. So at this point, they married within the family. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of people. Well, he sure is going to become a community of people. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham. Wow. So that you may take possession of the land where you have resident as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham. Well, if you're wondering about Israel these days, geographically, listen to these verses. God gave the land to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Padan-aram, to Laban's house. Now you're going to find out that Esau learns that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to find a wife, obviously. And he blessed him to be a community and told him not to marry Canaanite women, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone. Okay? So Esau then realizes how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. And he went to Ishmael and married. You see, here we got spite work happening now. Okay? So he marries in along with Ishmael, which was Abraham's first son. And in addition, he takes on another wife. Well, actually, she was another wife to a wife he already had. So that's the result of stepping out of God's will. Terrible, but it's the truth. So now what happens to Jacob? Well, Jacob goes on his way. Now he's going to travel probably 90, 120 miles to get up to where around Damascus into the area of probably Haran. And it's a long journey, and it's through some tough terrain. And in a modern air-conditioned bus in Israel, highways, it's a piece of cake, couple hours. But probably was a week's journey or more. So what can I tell you? He really does go anyway. He has to go. He's following his mother's advice. So Jacob left Beersheba, where they lived, okay, and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun was setting. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and laid down to sleep. Now this is interesting. This is the guy that's in the wilderness who isn't a field person. For Esau, this would have been a piece of cake, living among the land, okay? But this is the guy that was domesticated, remember? He had a dream in which he saw a staircase reaching on to the earth, with its top reaching to the heavens, and the angels of God were ascending and descending. So this is a pretty spiritual dream. This isn't a nightmare. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will be spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the people on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Well, the Jews did go all over the world eventually, and the Messiah is the blessing that is for all the world, because he's going to bring peace and forgiveness and mercy. And so for Gentiles, they believe that's Yeshua, and he already paid the price for their sins. That's why they don't feel guilty about their sins or shameful for what they've done. Okay? When you've been forgiven, you're brought back into the family of God. Okay? So, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to the land. He's doing that now. 4,000 years later, Jews are repopulating Israel from all over the world, even from communist countries. I will make, well, he says, I will bring you back to the land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. This case, he's talking about Jacob precisely. He's talking about, you're coming back, okay? You're not to go up there and think that's your permanent home. So when Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Well, maybe he wouldn't have gone there, because after doing what he did to his father, you know, he wasn't looking to face the ultimate judge, the ultimate righteousness, the ultimate holiness, okay? But God appeared to him because he had the blessing of his father, which was the blessing of God. The covenant that was made to Abraham, passed on to Isaac, and now is being passed on to him. It's an awesome responsibility. He was afraid and said, what awesome is this place? This is not other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Well, this is very important. He calls the place Bethel, which means the house of God. Okay? Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he was placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Love. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey, I will take and I will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house. Then the Lord will be my God. Do you see what's going on here? This is a bargaining, so to speak, with God. If you do this, then I'll do that. Well, you know, God gives us conditions too. He says, if you follow my laws, I will heal your land. If you pray to me, I will heal your land. If you repent, I will heal your land. Okay? Now he's doing the opposite. He's doing it to God. Okay? But it's obviously that his father's God is not his God yet. Why do I bring this point out? Well, it's very important. You know, people go to church, they go to synagogues, they go to mosques. Okay? Sometimes they do it for their fathers or mothers or for social fellowship, business connections. But you know what? They're not committed. The word committed means to do whatever is necessary to make it happen. Okay? It means being sold out. That's what a marriage vow is all about, being sold out. You know, Christians believe that they're the bride of Christ. Okay? What do they mean by that? They mean God is their husband. Okay? Same kind of respect and submission, rather than independent or codependent. Are you in a relationship that needs to be corrected and be interdependent rather than codependent or independent? So he bargains with God, okay? And you can see why his name is Jacob now, okay? And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Now, his grandfather had given a tenth to the high priest of Salem, Melchizedek. And I don't know if it was a religious thing or whether or not it was a culture thing, but it was around probably before Abraham. God uses it later on in Scripture. So now he goes off on his way, continues his journey, and he arrives at his uncle's house. Okay? Now remember that this family is the one who sent his mother to be Isaac's wife. So Jacob continues on his journey, and he comes to the land of the eastern people. So where is this? Well, it's probably between Iraq, probably, and Lebanon, just to give you a geographical viewpoint. So then he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of shepherds laying near it, because the flocks were watered from the well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Well, apparently they knew water was valuable. They didn't want people stealing it, contaminating it, using it. So they made it secure, like a tomb or a vault. And they probably needed all the shepherds to move the stone. So they waited for everybody to show up. Now, it's interesting. Jacob has some experience in this area. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban?" "Well," what do they say? "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter, Rachel, with the sheep." So, I don't know. I probably didn't have no sons. And the girls took care of the sheep. You remember Moses' daughters were taking care of the sheep when you read the book of Exodus. "Look," he said, "the sun is still high, and it's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pastures." Well, here you're seeing a sign of leadership. Okay? He's already giving advice to strangers on what they ought to do with their animals. Those of us that are leaders can't help it. It just comes out. It's like, this is foolish. They should be eating, and they're just laying around here waiting for a drink. Give them a drink, and they can go back and eat. Okay? "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. Okay? Shepherd takes care of the sheep. Later on, you're going to find that the Egyptians didn't like shepherds. Okay? When Jacob saw Rachel's daughter of his uncle Laban and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Now it's interesting, his mother, when she was at this well, not only gave Abraham's servant a drink of water, she watered his camels. So we have a reverse situation here. Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was relative of her father and the son of Rebekah. Okay? So they were like first or second cousins. Okay? So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him home. And when Jacob told him all these things, then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." So God provides a refuge for him in a place that appears to appreciate him, love him, realize he's blood, not knowing what God had in store for this young man. So comes a time where it says that man should not be alone. And the next part of this story is Jacob marrying. And what it says that after Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Because you are my relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now remember, his father was rich, and he was inheriting his father's wealth. But because he had to flee and leave everything behind. And that's exactly our relationship with God. We need to leave our past behind. Not technically and legally sometimes, but we have to separate ourselves in order to have a real relationship with the lover of our soul. So what happens here? Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the eldest was Leah, and the name of the youngest was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes. I can't explain to you what that means, but you know, when you look in a person's eyes, okay, you're looking at their soul, really. And I believe she had a good soul. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Now you can imagine a young man attracted. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for 7 years in return for your youngest daughter, Rachel." The uncle says to him, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob serves 7 years to get Rachel. But they seem like only a few days to him because of his love for her. So he's definitely in love with her. This is not just an arranged marriage. And he chooses his own wife. When Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, my time is completed, and I want to make love to her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah, and put her in Jacob. And Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant to her as well. Well, what happens in the morning? Okay, in a dark tent, he's deceived. The deceiver is deceived. When morning comes, you see, you reap what you sow. When morning comes, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" He uses the word deceive. Laban replied, "It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older. Finish the daughter's bridal week, like the honeymoon, right? Then we will give you your younger one also in return for another 7 years work." So you see what he was up to? He used the excuse that it was customary, but really he wants another 7 years. He likes this man's labor, and the man can't leave now because he's going to give him Rachel after a week of being on a honeymoon with her sister, but he's going to have to stay there and work. So, well, and Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Well, it's a very interesting story. Part 3 will be the years he spends in his uncle's house, who was also rich, and working off those 7 years for the woman of his choice. If you want to talk to us, email us at info@thefutureofisrael.net, and you can watch our previous show about Jacob by going to thefutureofisrael.org. So listen, be back next week and find out how this story unfolds. There's so much about Jacob. You must stay with us. God bless you and shalom. Be with us, same time, same place, or watch us on the web.